11 years after Linda Harris ruined my name, she walked into my store and tried to get my youngest employee fired over cold medicine. I heard her before I saw her. That voice cut through aisle 6 like a knife through plastic wrap. Sharp, polished, and certain the world owed it an apology. I was kneeling beside a half-empty shelf of canned tomatoes, trying to fix a display that had collapsed, because apparently marinara sauce had chosen violence, when Jaden's voice came over the radio. "Rachel, can you come to pharmacy?" He sounded calm, too calm. The kind of calm people use when they are 2 seconds away from crying or throwing a stapler. Then I heard her. I said, "I want to see the manager." My hand froze around a dented can. For a second, the store around me disappeared. The soft beep of checkout scanners, the squeak of a cart with one bad wheel, the smell of rotisserie chicken and floor cleaner, all of it thinned into a high, ugly silence. Linda Harris, my ex-mother-in-law, the woman who once told everyone in her church prayer circle that I had abandoned her son when he was sick and vulnerable, when the truth was I had been the only one trying to get Daniel help before he swallowed enough pills to stop breathing on our bathroom floor. I stood slowly. At the pharmacy counter, Jaden stood with both hands flat on the register, his brown eyes fixed on the screen like it might protect him. He was 23, new, sweet in the way people are before retail teaches them. The public is basically a weather event. His badge hung crooked on his vest. A line of customers had formed behind Linda. An older man with allergy drops, a woman holding diapers, a teenager pretending not to film. Linda stood in front of them in a cream raincoat, silver hair tucked perfectly behind her ears, one hand gripping the counter, the other pointing at Jaden's face. "You don't get to lecture me about policy," she said. "I have bought prescriptions from this pharmacy longer than you've been alive." Jaden swallowed. "Ma'am, I'm not lecturing you. I'm just saying there's a limit on what I can sell in one transaction. I am buying medicine for my son. I understand, but..." "No, you don't understand anything." Her voice rose. "You are an undertrained child with a scanner. I need a manager, now." The woman with diapers winced. The teenager lowered his phone a fraction. Jaden's ears had gone red. Something inside me went cold. Not angry yet. Colder than that. I walked toward them, my shoes tapping against the polished floor, past the greeting cards, past the display of discounted Easter candy no one wanted, because it was now June and even chocolate rabbits have dignity. "Jaden," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Take a step back for me." Linda turned toward me with irritation already loaded on her face. Then she saw me. At first nothing happened. Her eyes moved over my Navy manager vest, my name tag, my shorter hair, the faint lines around my mouth that weren't there 11 years ago. Then recognition landed, slow and hard. Her lips parted. "Rachel?" I had imagined running into her many times. Usually in those imaginary scenes, I said something devastating and perfect, the kind of sentence that would make background music swell and strangers applaud. In real life, my mouth was dry, my left hand smelled like tomato can dust, and someone's baby was beginning to fuss behind her. "Linda," I said. Her shock lasted half a breath. Then the old Linda returned, pulling herself upright like a curtain rising. "Well," she said, "of course it's you." Jaden looked between us. "You two know each other?" Linda smiled without warmth. "Unfortunately." I could feel the customers listening. Retail creates strange little theaters. People pretend to examine gum while absorbing every detail of your trauma. I stepped behind the counter beside Jaden. "My employee followed store policy. You can purchase what the register allows. Nothing more." Her eyes narrowed. "You always did enjoy making things harder than necessary." That sentence hit exactly where she meant it to. 11 years vanished. I was back in that yellow bathroom, kneeling beside Daniel, while Linda cried at the door and begged me not to tell the paramedics what he had taken. Then later, after the hospital, after the lies, after she told everyone I had invented his addiction to excuse leaving him, I breathed in through my nose. The store smelled like rain on wool coats and antibacterial wipes. "This isn't personal," I said. Linda leaned closer. "Everything with you is personal." Jaden shifted beside me. "Ma'am, I can call corporate if you want the policy explained." Linda snapped her gaze to him. "You will not call anyone. You will ring up my items, apologize for embarrassing me, and then your manager can decide whether you're worth keeping." Jaden went very still. That did it. No, I said. Linda blinked. I turned the register screen toward myself, voided the items that exceeded the limit, and placed them in a gray return bin under the counter. You're not threatening his job because he refused to break rules for you. Her cheeks flushed. You have no idea what I'm dealing with. You're right, I said. I don't. But then her paper bag split. It happened quietly, one wet little tear at the bottom, then everything spilled onto the floor between us. 2 bottles of electrolyte drinks rolled under the counter. A pack of men's socks slid against my shoe. Gauze, antiseptic wipes, a motel receipt, folded once, and a red and white box of Narcan landed face up beneath the fluorescent lights. My chest tightened. Linda moved fast, too fast for a woman who had just claimed to be fragile and mistreated. She crouched, gathering everything with shaking hands. But I had already seen the address. A motel on Northeast 82nd Avenue, and the name printed on the receipt. Daniel Harris. For the first time since she walked in, Linda looked scared. Not ashamed. Scared. Don't, she whispered. The baby behind her started crying harder. The scanner at lane 3 beeped and beeped and beeped, like some small machine had decided to count down the rest of my life. I looked from the Narcan to Linda's face. What happened to Daniel? I asked. Her fingers closed around the receipt until it crumpled. Then she said the same thing she had said 11 years ago, on the worst night of my marriage. You stay away from my son. Linda snatched the Narcan off the floor like I had caught her holding a weapon instead of the thing that might keep her son alive. For 1 second, nobody moved. Jaden stood beside me, pale and stiff, still carrying the humiliation she had poured on him in front of half the pharmacy line. Linda's hands shook as she shoved gauze, socks, electrolyte bottles, and the crumpled motel receipt back into the torn paper bag. The customers watched with that awful public curiosity people get when a stranger's private disaster spills out under fluorescent lights. Linda, I said quietly, is Daniel using again? Her head snapped up. You don't say his name. The words hit Jaden hard enough that he looked at me. I could see the question forming in his face, but he was smart enough not to ask it there. I reached under the counter, pulled out a plastic store bag, and set it beside Linda. Your bag is ripped. I don't need your help. You need a bag. A man behind her muttered, I just need allergy drops, which honestly felt fair. Tragedy rarely checks the line before arriving. Linda's mouth tightened. She took the bag anyway, because pride has limits when your electrolyte drinks are rolling toward a rack of lip balm. I turned to Jaden. Go take 5 in the break room. He hesitated. Rachel, I'm okay. No, you're not. Fat, and you don't have to perform okay for customers who came in for cough syrup and accidentally got dinner theater. A tiny laugh came from the diaper woman, quickly swallowed. Jaden blinked, then nodded and stepped away, shoulders still too high. Linda watched him go with disgust. You always gather wounded little birds around you. I looked at her. I protect my employees. You create victims, she said. That was always your talent. There it was. The old story, polished and ready. Rachel, the dramatic one. Rachel, the exaggerator. Rachel, the woman who made normal family problems ugly by saying them out loud. I kept my voice low. You came into my store, threatened a 23-year-old's job, and tried to bypass the medication limit. My son is sick. Then he needs a doctor. He needs his mother. I almost laughed, but there was nothing funny in it. Behind Linda, a checkout scanner beeped again and again until someone finally found the barcode on a frozen pizza. Life kept being ridiculous around us. Maybe that was why people survived it. I leaned closer, just enough that the line behind her couldn't catch every word. 11 years ago, Daniel needed a doctor too. He begged me not to tell the EMTs what he took. Her face changed so fast it almost scared me. Lower your voice. No, Rachel. No, I said again. And this time, my hands stopped shaking. You don't get to walk into my workplace, bully my staff, threaten my job, and then whisper the same old instructions at me. Her eyes flicked toward the customers. You want to do this here? I don't want to do this anywhere. You brought him into my store in a paper bag. The words landed. For a moment, I saw her age. Not in her skin, which was still carefully moisturized and powdered, but in the sudden sag of her certainty. The cream raincoat, the perfect hair, the purse with gold hardware, none of it could hide the fear underneath. Then she recovered. I'm filing a complaint, she said. Corporate will know their night manager is using a personal vendetta to deny care to a vulnerable man. Care? I repeated. Is that what we're calling motel rooms and secret pharmacy runs now? Her eyes hardened. You have no right to judge me after what you did. What I did. You left him. Her voice rose again, just enough for the line to hear. You walked out when he was broken. Don't stand there like some saint because you wear a name tag. Heat crawled up my neck. I felt every head turn. The teenager's phone lifted half an inch. I could have defended myself. I could have told them about Daniel blue-lipped on bathroom tile, about Linda's hands grabbing my wrist as she whispered, "Say back pain, Rachel. Say it was his back." I could have told them how the whole Harris family stopped calling after Linda decided one lie was easier to carry than one truth. But I was at work. Jaden had already been humiliated. And Linda wanted a scene because scenes make truth look unstable. So I smiled. Not kindly, professionally. You're welcome to contact corporate, I said. I'll send them the camera footage, the transaction record, and the audio from the pharmacy counter. Her expression twitched. I pointed toward the ceiling. New system. Very sensitive. Picks up everything except my assistant manager singing Fleetwood Mac and receiving, unfortunately. We've all suffered. The diaper woman coughed into her sleeve. Linda did not laugh. You think a camera makes you safe? She asked. No, I said. I think it makes you recorded. For the first time, she looked past me toward the black dome above the pharmacy sign. Then she grabbed the plastic bag. As she turned to leave, she leaned close enough that I smelled peppermint gum on her breath. If you say one word to anyone about Daniel, she whispered, I'll make sure every person in this store knows exactly what kind of wife you were. I held her gaze. They already know what kind of manager I am. She left without answering. The sliding doors opened to a sheet of Portland rain, and Linda disappeared into it, her plastic bag swinging hard against her leg. I found Jaden in the break room 10 minutes later, sitting under the vending machine light with his elbows on his knees. A packet of peanut butter crackers sat unopened beside him. You okay? I asked. He looked up. That lady's been here before. My pulse tightened. How many times? 3. Maybe 4. He rubbed his palms on his jeans. Sometimes she buys stuff. Sometimes she just waits outside. Outside where? He pointed toward the front windows. In the parking lot. There's a guy in an old green Subaru. Thin. Beard. Looks sick. Jaden swallowed. She hands him bags through the window. Half my stomach dropped. Did you ever see his face clearly? Jaden nodded. Then he said, yeah. And Rachel? He was crying. By midnight, Linda had already filed the complaint, because apparently ruining my peace came with same-day delivery. I was still in the manager's office when the email hit my inbox. The store had emptied out except for the night stalkers, the cleaning machine whining somewhere near frozen foods like an old man arguing with linoleum. My vest hung over the back of my chair. My hands smelled like receipt paper and hand sanitizer. On the desk, Jaden's written statement sat beside mine, both of them too neat for what had actually happened. Subject: customer concern. Immediate review required. I didn't open it right away. I just stared at Linda's name in the first line of the preview and felt something inside me sink with a tired little splash. She claimed I had denied her medically necessary items because of a long-standing personal grudge. She said Jaden had been disrespectful. She said I had humiliated her in public. She did not mention calling him an undertrained child. She did not mention threatening his job. She definitely did not mention the Narcan, the motel receipt, or the way her face had gone white when Daniel's name hit the floor between us. Of course she didn't. Linda had always known how to build a lie with clean edges. My district supervisor, Mark, had added one short line at the top. Rachel, please send documentation before 10 a.m. We need to understand your side before this escalates. Your side. I hated that phrase. It made truth sound like a seating arrangement. I forwarded the camera clip request to security, attached Jaden's statement, and typed a response so professional it should have worn little orthopedic shoes. Then I sat back and let the office hum around me. For 11 years I had told myself I was past this. Then one woman in a cream raincoat said my name, and suddenly my chest remembered every room I had survived. I drove home through thin Portland rain, the kind that doesn't fall so much as hover judgmentally. My apartment in Selwood Moorland was small, warm, and aggressively mine. Second-hand couch. Crooked bookshelf. One fern I kept alive mostly out of mutual stubbornness. No wedding photos. No Harris family Christmas cards. No one waiting in the living room to tell me I was imagining things. I locked the door behind me and leaned against it until my breathing slowed. Then I made dinner, because trauma is rude, but blood sugar is real. The salad I had bought on markdown looked fine until I opened it. The spinach had collapsed into itself like it had heard bad news. I poked it with a fork and whispered, "Same, buddy." I ate toast instead. At the kitchen table, under the yellow light that buzzed when it felt dramatic, I opened the bottom drawer where I kept old papers I pretended not to keep. Tax forms, a warranty for a vacuum I no longer owned, a birthday card from my sister, and, folded inside an envelope with no label, a single page from 11 years ago. Daniel's page. I hadn't looked at it in years. My handwriting ran down the side in blue ink: rehab centers, outpatient programs, emergency numbers, support groups. I had written them in a panic after finding Daniel asleep sitting up in the bathtub, his skin gray under the bathroom light, his breathing shallow enough that I thought the world had narrowed to the space between one breath and the next. I remembered Linda standing in the doorway in her church dress, pearls still around her neck from Sunday service. "Don't say overdose," she had begged. "Please, Rachel, if they write that down, it follows him." "He needs help," I had said. "He needs dignity." That was Linda's favorite word. Dignity. She used it whenever she meant secrecy. The paramedics came. Daniel lived. Linda cried into a tissue and told the ER nurse it was a medication mix-up after a back injury. I stood beside the vending machines with blood on my sleeve from where Daniel had scratched me coming to, and I said nothing because I thought silence was mercy. 2 weeks later, Linda told everyone I had exaggerated Daniel's condition to make myself look noble before leaving him. Daniel never corrected her. Maybe he couldn't. Maybe he wouldn't. Back then, I stopped trying to separate the two because both answers hurt. My phone buzzed. For one stupid second, I thought it might be Daniel. It was Mark. "Thanks for the documentation. Corporate may still want a formal call tomorrow. Customer is threatening public review." I put the phone face down. The fern by the window dripped onto the sill. A bus hissed past outside. Somewhere upstairs, my neighbor's dog barked 3 times, probably at a ghost or a spoon. The world kept going with its usual lack of respect for emotional timing. I picked up Daniel's old rehab list again. Most numbers were probably dead. People moved, clinics closed, Hope changed addresses. But the first name on the list was still familiar. East Portland Recovery Outreach. I searched it on my phone with my thumb hovering over the screen. The website loaded, still open, still running, still answering calls 24 hours. My throat tightened. I was not Daniel's wife anymore. I was not his rescuer. I was not the woman who would drag him out of every fire while his mother blamed me for the smoke. But I had seen that motel receipt. I had seen the Narcan. And I had heard Jaden say Daniel was crying in an old green Subaru while his mother passed him bags through a window. At 12:47 a.m., I saved the number. Then I sat in my quiet kitchen staring at the name, knowing sleep would not come. Because the past had not knocked politely. It had walked into my store, screamed for the manager, and dropped my ex-husband's emergency kit on the floor. At 1:13 in the morning, a stranger on a recovery hotline told me my ex-husband had been seen sleeping behind a pawn shop on Northeast 82nd, and I had to grip my kitchen table so hard my fingers went numb. The woman's name was Marisol Vega. Her voice was low, steady, worn smooth by years of answering calls from people who were one bad night away from becoming statistics. "You said Daniel Harris?" she asked. "Yes." There was a pause. Not long, but long enough to change the temperature in my apartment. "I can't confirm private medical information," she said carefully. "But I can tell you our outreach team has made contact with a man by that name several times over the past few months." I closed my eyes. Rain tapped softly against the window over my sink. The yellow kitchen light buzzed above me. My toast sat untouched on a chipped plate because apparently I had decided to pair emotional collapse with carbs. "Is he in treatment?" I asked. "No." The word landed flat. "He talked to us," Marisol continued. "He accepted food twice. Once he let a volunteer check a wound on his hand, but he left before intake every time. Why? Another pause. When people are ashamed, they often repeat the story someone gave them, she said. My stomach tightened. What story? Marisol exhaled quietly. He said his wife left because she thought he was hopeless. I opened my eyes. For a moment, I could not hear the rain anymore. Hopeless. The word moved through me like a hand reaching into an old bruise. I never said that, I whispered. I believe you. 3 words. Simple. Unremarkable. But I had to press my palm over my mouth because, for 11 years, almost nobody connected to Daniel had ever said them to me. I pulled out a chair and sat down before my knees decided to become decorative. His mother told him that. I wondered, Marisol said. He mentions his mother often. She brings him supplies, sometimes money, sometimes motel rooms. Does that help him? It keeps him alive some nights, she said, and stuck, most others. That was the ugliest part. Linda's love was not fake. It was worse than fake. It was real, frightened, controlling love that wrapped itself around Daniel's throat and called itself protection. I rubbed my forehead. I'm not his wife anymore. I know. I can't be pulled back into this. I know that too. I spent years trying to get him help while she told everyone I was making him look bad. Marisol stayed quiet. She didn't rush to comfort me. I liked her for that. Comfort, when poured too quickly, can feel like someone trying to mop up blood with a cocktail napkin. Finally, she said, helping someone access care is not the same as becoming responsible for their recovery. I laughed once, dry and tired. That should be on a mug. I've considered it. The font would be terrible. A real laugh escaped me then, small and cracked, but real. Marisol gave me the location of an outreach van that would be near a church parking lot the next afternoon. She told me not to chase Daniel, not to promise anything, not to argue with Linda if she appeared. Addiction loves chaos, she said. So do families built around denial. After we hung up, I sat in the kitchen until the light outside turned gray. I called Mark at 9. The corporate review was exactly as pleasant as a dental cleaning performed by email. Mark said Linda had significant concerns. I sent him the pharmacy footage, Jaden's statement, the transaction record, and the audio where Linda threatened his job. By the end of the call, Mark sounded less like a supervisor and more like a man regretting every life choice that led him to retail management. We'll keep documenting, he said. For now, you're not in trouble. For now. I thanked him anyway. At 4 that afternoon, after sleeping badly for 2 hours and drinking coffee that tasted like burnt apology, I drove east. Portland changed as I crossed the river. The postcard version softened into pawn shops, used tire signs, bus stops, wet pavement, and people carrying entire lives in plastic bags. I parked near the church lot and spotted the outreach van beside a row of leafless trees. Marisol was shorter than I expected, with silver hoops, a red rain jacket, and eyes that missed nothing. You're Rachel, she said. I'm guessing I look like someone who didn't sleep. You look like someone who tried coffee and resentment for breakfast. Balanced diet. She smiled, then nodded toward the street. Across the lot, near a green Subaru with a cracked taillight, stood Daniel. He was thinner than the ghost I had been carrying in my memory. His beard was patchy, his shoulders curved inward. He held a paper cup with both hands like it was the only warm thing left in the world. My breath caught. Then a beige sedan pulled up beside him. Linda stepped out with a pharmacy bag in her hand. And before I could move, Daniel looked over her shoulder and saw me. Daniel looked at me like I was a hallucination his mother had warned him about. For a second, none of us moved. The outreach van hummed behind me. Rain slid down the windshield of the green Subaru in thin, crooked lines. Linda stood between us with a pharmacy bag in her hand, her cream coat buttoned to the throat, her face tightening as if my presence had personally offended the weather. Get in the car, Daniel, she said. He didn't. That was new. 11 years ago, Daniel would have obeyed her before she finished the sentence. Back then, Linda didn't need to shout. She just arranged guilt in a room until everyone stood where she wanted them. Now Daniel stared at me over her shoulder, hollow-eyed, shivering, holding that paper cup with both hands. Rachel, he said. My name came out rough, uncertain, like a word he had stopped using because it hurt his mouth. I took one careful step forward. Hi, Daniel. Linda spun toward me. No, absolutely not. Marisol stayed beside the van, quiet but alert. I could feel her presence like a guardrail, not pushing, not rescuing, just there. Daniel's eyes moved over my face. Mom said you were working at some store. I am. She said you saw the receipt. Linda's hand clenched around the pharmacy bag. Daniel, we are leaving. He still didn't move. A truck passed on 82nd, spraying water along the curb. The cold air smelled like wet asphalt, exhaust, and coffee from a drive-through window nearby. Very Portland. Even emotional disasters came with espresso access. Daniel looked older than 40. Not in years exactly, but in damage. His cheeks were sunken, his beard uneven, one knuckle wrapped in dirty tape. The man I married had once danced barefoot in our kitchen while burning pancakes and insisting charcoal is a flavor profile. This man looked like he had been living under the weight of every lie we never buried properly. I didn't know you were still here, he said. I came back 6 years ago. His mouth tightened. Mom said you left Oregon. Linda snapped. Because she did leave. I looked at her. I left your house, not the planet. Marisol made a very small sound that might have been a cough. Linda's eyes cut toward her. Who is this? Linda demanded. Marisol Vega, Marisol said calmly. East Portland Recovery Outreach. Linda lifted her chin. My son doesn't need outreach. Daniel gave a short laugh. It was ugly. Broken. Honest. Linda froze. He looked at her. I'm standing next to a van that gives out clean socks and sandwiches, Mom. Her face went red. Because you refused to come home. Home? His voice cracked. You mean your couch? Your rules? Your pills in a weekly organizer like that makes it normal? The words hit the air hard. My stomach twisted. Linda stepped toward him. Don't talk like this in public. There it is, I said before I could stop myself. She turned on me. Stay out of it. But Daniel was looking at me now and his face had changed. Confusion, shame, suspicion, all tangled together. Did you really tell everyone I was hopeless? He asked. The question was so quiet I almost wished he had yelled. No, I said. Linda made a sharp noise. Daniel. No, I repeated louder. I never said that. He swallowed. Mom said after the hospital, you told Aunt Carol you couldn't waste your life on an addict. I felt the old bathroom rise around me. The white tiles, the pill bottle under the sink, Linda's hand gripping my wrist hard enough to bruise. I called rehab centers for you, I said. I called your doctor. I called support groups. I called 911 when you stopped breathing. Daniel's eyes flicked to Linda. She shook her head. She's twisting it. She always twisted things. I kept the list, I said. That stopped both of them. Linda stared at me. Daniel whispered. What list? The one I made after the ER. Programs, numbers, notes. My throat tightened, but my voice held. I wanted you to go. Your mother wanted everyone to think it was just back pain. Linda's face hardened into something mean and scared. You were hysterical. You wanted attention. I wanted my husband alive. Silence. The paper cup trembled in Daniel's hands. Coffee spilled over his fingers, but he didn't seem to feel it. Marisol stepped forward slightly. Daniel, we can talk inside the van. No commitment, just talk. Linda grabbed his sleeve. No. He looked down at her hand. For a long second, I thought he would fold. Then he gently pulled away. Linda's expression cracked. Daniel, she said, and for the first time her voice sounded less like command and more like panic. He looked at me instead. I don't know what's true anymore. The sentence hurt because I believed him. I nodded toward Marisol. Then stop letting her be the only person who tells you. Daniel's eyes filled, but no tears fell. He turned toward the van. Linda stepped in front of him, and this time he walked around her. Linda did not scream when Daniel stepped into the outreach van, and somehow that was worse. She just stood in the church parking lot with rain beating on her cream coat, watching the side door close between her and the son she had spent years keeping small enough to control. Her face went blank, not calm. Blank. Like all the fury had gone underground and was looking for a gas line. I knew that look. I had seen it the night Daniel came home from the hospital and told her he wanted to talk to a counselor. Linda had made tea. She had set 3 mugs on the table. She had patted his hand. Then, by morning, every appointment brochure I collected had disappeared from the kitchen counter. Denial, in the Harris family, wore slippers and cleaned up after itself. Proud of yourself? Linda asked. I stood beside Marisol's empty passenger seat, rain collecting in my hair. No. Liar. I'm cold, tired, and I have a corporate review because you yelled at my employee over pharmacy policy. Pride is not the emotion I would lead with. Her mouth tightened. You humiliated me. Daniel walked into a van voluntarily, because you poisoned him against me. I let out a breath. It fogged in the cold air between us. Linda, if one conversation with me can undo 11 years of your version, maybe your version wasn't holding up that well. Her eyes sharpened. There it was. I should have walked away. Marisol had warned me not to argue. Addiction loved chaos. Linda loved it too, as long as she got to name it concern. Instead, I stood there because some stubborn, bruised part of me was still 27 years old, still waiting for this woman to admit what she had done. She stepped closer. Do you know what he was like after you left? Yes. No, you don't. You got to leave. I stayed. I cleaned up the vomit. I paid the motel bills. I answered calls at 2 a.m. when he didn't know where he was. And then you told him I left because he was hopeless. She flinched so quickly I almost missed it. A car rolled past the church lot, tires hissing on wet pavement. Somewhere behind us, a man laughed outside the pawn shop, the sound too loud and too lonely. Linda recovered. He needed something to make sense of it. He needed treatment. He needed not to be abandoned. I didn't abandon him, I said. My voice shook once, then steadied. You locked every exit and called it love. Her hand lifted. For half a second, I thought she might slap me right there beside the outreach van. Then the van door opened. Daniel stepped down slowly, one hand braced on the frame. His eyes were red. Marisol stood behind him, not touching him, letting him choose his balance. Mom, he said. Linda's whole face softened. It was instant, startling. That was the cruel thing about her. She did love him. In the ruined, terrified way people love something they cannot bear to let become separate. Daddy, come with me, she said. We'll go home. I'll make soup. You can sleep. He looked exhausted enough that soup almost sounded like medicine. I'm going with them tonight, he said. Linda stared at him. No, just for intake. No. His shoulders pulled inward. I saw the old pattern trying to close around him. Her panic became his guilt. His guilt became surrender. Surrender became another motel room, another bag, another morning no one named properly. Marisol spoke gently. Daniel can decide for himself. Linda turned on her. You people always think a clipboard makes you family. Marisol did not blink. No, but it sometimes helps when family is part of the problem. For one tiny, inappropriate second, I wanted to applaud. I did not, because I was trying to be a grown woman, and also because my hands were freezing. Linda looked back at Daniel. If you go, don't call me crying when they treat you like trash. His face crumpled. I hated her then. Fully. Cleanly. Not because she was angry. Because she knew exactly where he was weakest, and still pressed there. Daniel whispered, Why do you do that? Linda's eyes filled. Because I'm trying to save you. No, he said, you're trying to keep me where you can see me. She stepped back as if he had struck her. That was when my phone buzzed. Mark. I ignored it. It buzzed again. Then Jaden's name flashed. I answered, keeping one eye on Daniel. Rachel. Jaden said, breathless. I'm sorry, I know you're off, but you need to see the neighborhood group. My stomach sank. What happened? That woman posted about you. She used your full name. She said you denied medicine to her disabled son because you're bitter about your divorce. I closed my eyes. Of course. Linda had not waited to attack. She had simply changed stages. Jaden continued. People are sharing it. Someone tagged corporate. Across the lot, Linda was watching me now. She knew. Maybe she had scheduled the post before she even stepped out of her car. Maybe she had written it in the pharmacy parking lot with shaking thumbs and perfect punctuation. What else? I asked. Jaden hesitated. Tell me. She said you lied about Daniel's addiction years ago. The rain seemed to stop for half a second. Then Linda said softly, from 5 feet away, I warned you. Daniel looked between us, confused. What did you do? Linda lifted her chin, tears still shining in her eyes like jewelry. What I had to. My phone buzzed again. This time it was an email from corporate. Mandatory administrative review. Effective immediately, I was being taken off the schedule pending investigation. I stared at the screen, then at Linda. She had not raised her voice. She had not touched me. But once again she had reached into my life and started moving pieces around like I belonged to her. Daniel took one step toward me. Rachel? I looked at him, then at the outreach van, then at Linda's wet, satisfied face. Go with Marisol, I said. But, go, I said. Don't let this be the reason you run. His eyes filled. Then he climbed back into the van. Linda's smile vanished. And as the van pulled away from the curb, carrying Daniel toward a place his mother could not follow, I stood in the rain, holding the email that said my job was now on the line. Daniel vanished from intake before sunrise, and the last person who saw him said his mother had been waiting outside with the car running. Marisol called me at 6:18 a.m. I was sitting on my couch in yesterday's clothes, laptop open, watching strangers in the neighborhood group discuss whether I was dangerous around vulnerable people, like I hadn't spent a decade learning how to stay calm while men yelled at me over expired coupons. Her voice was careful, too careful. Rachel, he left. I sat up so fast my neck cracked. What do you mean he left? He completed the first part of intake. He agreed to detox placement. Then he asked to use the bathroom and went out the side exit. My stomach dropped. Outside my window, Portland was barely awake. The sky had that damp gray color that made everything look underwater. My phone was hot in my hand from hours of refreshing comments I should never have read. Linda? I asked. We don't know, but one of the volunteers saw a beige sedan across the street. Of course, Linda had dragged my name through mud all night, gotten me pulled off schedule, and still found time to collect her son before treatment could get its hands around him. The woman multitasked like a villain with a calendar app. I closed my laptop. Where would he go? Motel. Car. Anywhere familiar. He was scared. He was scared because she made him scared. I know, Marisol said. But right now, blame won't help us find him. That was annoying because it was true. I grabbed my keys, pulled on the first hoodie I found, and didn't bother brushing my hair. There are emergencies where dignity becomes a luxury item, and mine was currently somewhere under a pile of laundry. Marisol picked me up 20 minutes later in an aging blue Honda that smelled like coffee, rain, and peppermint gum. A stack of outreach folders sat in the back seat. She handed me a paper cup without looking away from the road. You brought coffee? You look like a woman who might bite through glass. I still might. Then sit first. We started at the motel from Linda's receipt on Northeast 82nd. The sign buzzed red in the morning mist. A man in a yellow rain poncho was arguing with the vending machine by the office, accusing it of stealing his breakfast, which felt like the only honest conversation happening in Portland. The front desk clerk recognized Daniel's name but wouldn't give us a room number. Privacy, he said, chewing something neon orange. Marisol showed her outreach badge. We're concerned he may be in medical danger. The clerk looked at me. You family? I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Ex-wife sounded too old. Stranger sounded too cruel. Family sounded like a door I had locked from the outside and still kept the key to. I'm someone who called 911 for him once, I said. The clerk's face shifted, not softened exactly, but shifted. Room 118, but he checked out yesterday. Alone? Marisol asked. He scratched his chin. Older lady paid cash. He looked rough. We checked the parking lot. No Subaru. By noon, we had tried 2 more motels, a gas station, the back of a grocery outlet, and a diner where the waitress remembered Daniel because he tipped her $2 and apologized for only ordering toast. That detail nearly broke me. Not the danger. Not Linda's lies. Toast. Because I could see him doing it. Daniel had always apologized to waitresses, even when he was at his worst. Addiction had taken so much from him, but not that tiny, useless piece of politeness. For some reason, that made me furious enough to keep going. At 1:40, Jaden called. I know I'm probably not supposed to be involved, he said, which meant he was absolutely involved. What happened? I watched the parking lot footage from last week. The green Subaru, it has a cracked taillight and a sticker from Mount Tabor Auto. Jaden, I know. Boundaries, HR, adult supervision, but I called them. I closed my eyes. Please tell me you didn't pretend to be police. No. I pretended to be confused, which is basically my natural state. Despite everything, I laughed. He gave me an address for an old repair invoice connected to the Subaru. A pay-by-the-week motel off Southeast Powell. Marisol drove there too fast and said nothing when I gripped the dashboard like a woman seeking religious conversion. We found the Subaru behind the building, half hidden near a dumpster. The driver's door was unlocked. Inside were fast food wrappers, a damp blanket, an empty water bottle, and one of the electrolyte drinks from Linda's torn pharmacy bag. Then I saw the motel room door at the end of the row cracked open. "Daniel?" I called. No answer. Marisol was already moving. The room smelled stale and chemical, curtains drawn, TV flickering blue over an empty bed. Daniel was on the carpet beside the bathroom, one hand curled near his chest, lips pale, breath shallow. For one terrible second I was 27 again. Then I wasn't. I dropped to my knees, called 911, and heard my own voice come out steady. "Daniel, stay with me." Marisol tore open the Narcan kit. Outside, tires screamed into the lot. Linda's beige sedan slid to a stop behind us. She ran toward the open door, face wild. "What did you do to him?" I looked up from the floor, my fingers pressed against Daniel's wrist, feeling for the thin, stubborn thread of his pulse. "No," I said. "What did you keep doing?" Linda tried to stop the paramedics from taking Daniel, and for one terrifying second, I thought she might actually climb into the ambulance and fight medical science with a purse. "Ma'am, step back," one EMT said, one hand out, calm in the way people get when they are very close to calling police. "He is my son," Linda snapped, rain dripping from her hair now, her perfect cream coat streaked with motel parking lot dirt. "I need to ride with him." Daniel was on the stretcher, an oxygen mask over his face, eyes half open but unfocused. The Narcan had pulled him back hard and ugly. He was breathing, but barely. His hand kept twitching near the blanket, like he was searching for something that wasn't there. I stood near the open motel room door, my knees soaked from the carpet, my palms sticky with sweat and old dust. The room behind me still glowed blue from the TV. Some game show host was smiling silently at a contestant holding a blender. Life had a sick sense of timing. Marisol was talking to the second EMT, giving clear details. Approximate age, possible opioid overdose. Narcan administered, unknown quantity, possible repeated use. She sounded steady enough for both of us. Linda pointed at me. "She caused this. She upset him yesterday. She filled his head with lies." The EMT looked at me, then at Daniel, then back at Linda with the exhausted expression of a man who had met too many families. "Ma'am, we're going to the hospital. I'm coming." A small sound came from the stretcher. Everyone stopped. Daniel's eyes moved, slow and glassy, until they found his mother. "No," he whispered behind the mask. Linda froze. The word was barely there. A breath. A scrape. But it landed harder than any scream. "No, Danny, you're confused," she said quickly. "You need me." His fingers curled into the blanket. "No." The EMT shut the ambulance doors with Linda still standing outside. For once, she had no script. At Providence Portland Medical Center, the waiting room smelled like coffee, bleach, and wet wool. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. A toddler cried near the vending machines while his father tried to convince him that animal crackers were, basically, dinner. Which, honestly, I respected. I sat in a plastic chair beside Marisol, my hoodie damp, my hair drying into something that could legally frighten birds. Linda stood across the room, arms folded, staring at me like hatred was the only thing keeping her upright. "You shouldn't be here," she said. I looked at the closed ER doors. "Probably." That made her blink. "I'm not his wife," I said. "I'm not his emergency contact. I'm not pretending I belong in decisions I walked away from 11 years ago." "You admit it, then?" I turned to her. "I walked away from your house. I did not walk away from the truth." Her mouth tightened. Then she did what Linda always did when cornered. She softened, her shoulders dropped, tears filled her eyes, her voice went thin and wounded. "I am his mother, Rachel. I have buried every version of my son, except the one still breathing. Do you know what that feels like?" For a moment, I almost answered gently. Almost. Because grief was real, fear was real. But Linda could make real pain into a weapon so fast you forgot it had ever been human. Before I could respond, a nurse stepped into the waiting room. "Daniel Harris is awake. He's asking for Marisol Vega." Linda moved first. "I'm his mother." The nurse checked the tablet. "He asked for Marisol. And Rachel Moore." Linda's face strained. Mine probably did too. Inside the room, Daniel looked smaller under the hospital blanket. An IV line ran into his arm. His lips were cracked. The monitor beside him beeped in a steady rhythm that made my throat ache. "I don't want her in here," he said when Linda appeared behind us. Linda pressed a hand to her chest. "Daniel." A social worker named Anita stood near the foot of the bed, silver pen clipped to her badge. "Mr. Harris has requested this conversation without family interference." "I am family," Linda said. Daniel closed his eyes. That's the problem. The room went quiet except for the monitor. Anita asked questions. Daniel answered slowly. Yes, his mother held his debit card. Yes, she paid motel rooms in cash. Yes, she sometimes took his phone so he wouldn't call people who made him worse. Yes, for years she told him I left because I said he was hopeless. My hands folded together so tightly my knuckles hurt. Linda began to cry. I did everything for you. Daniel looked at her. Really looked. No, Mom, he said, voice raw. You didn't save me. You hid me. Linda made a broken sound. She's turning you against me. Daniel's eyes shifted to me. Not with love, not with romance, not with any old promise coming back to life. Just truth, bruised and breathing. She told me to stop letting you be the only person who talks, he said. Anita leaned slightly forward. Daniel, do you want it noted that your mother is not to interfere with your initial treatment plan or intake placement? Linda whispered, please. Daniel stared at the ceiling for a long moment. Then he said, yes. Linda slapped me in the parking lot 2 days after Daniel entered detox, and the worst part was how unsurprised I felt. I had just stepped out of the store after my administrative review, wearing my manager vest again for the first time in 48 hours. The sky was low and gray, the kind of Portland afternoon that made even the shopping carts look depressed. My cheeks still smelled faintly of office coffee because Mark had made me sit through a video call so long and awkward it should have come with a warning label. But it was over. Corporate had reviewed the pharmacy footage. They heard Linda call Jaden an undertrained child. They heard her threaten his job. They heard me offer a bag, refuse to break policy, and tell her she was welcome to file a complaint. Mark cleared his throat 3 separate times, which was his version of an emotional breakthrough, and said, Rachel, you handled it appropriately. Appropriately. After 11 years of being called bitter, dramatic, unstable, and cruel, one dry corporate word almost knocked me sideways. Jaden was waiting near the time clock when I came out of the office. He pretended not to be waiting, which was difficult because he was holding a cupcake with a crooked candle stuck in it. What is that? I asked. A celebration cupcake. It's from the break room vending machine. It has frosting. Don't attack joy. The candle wasn't lit because, according to Jaden, open flame, near paper schedules felt like a metaphor we didn't need. I laughed for the first time in days, and it came out rusty but real. Then Linda appeared outside the front windows. She stood near the cart return, hair pulled back, coat buttoned wrong, face bare of makeup. Without the powder and pearls, she looked smaller. Older. A woman hollowed out by her own choices and furious that anyone could see through her. I told Jaden to stay inside. Naturally, he followed me to the automatic doors and stood there pretending to study a display of reusable bags like the world's least subtle bodyguard. Linda didn't greet me. You took him from me, she said. The wet pavement reflected the red store sign in broken strips. A bus hissed past on Hawthorne, spraying dirty water near the curb. Somewhere behind me, the doors opened and closed with their cheerful little chime, completely unaware that my life was once again being difficult in public. I didn't take Daniel anywhere, I said. He signed himself into treatment. Because you shamed him. No, I said, because he almost died. Her mouth trembled. For half a second, I thought she might cry honestly. Not the courtroom kind of crying, not the church lady kind. Something real. Then she said he was fine before you came back. That old rage rose in me, but it didn't burn wild anymore. It came up clean like a match struck in a dark room. He was sleeping in a car, I said. He overdosed in a motel room. You were buying Narcan while telling everyone he was fine. Linda, fine is not a location on Northeast 82nd. Her hand moved before I saw it coming. The slap cracked across my cheek, sharp and bright. For 1 second, all I heard was the rain. Then Jaden shouted, Hey! The doors flew open. Our security guard Denise came out fast, one hand already on her radio. Linda stepped back, stunned by what she had done, or maybe stunned that this time someone had seen it. My cheek stung. My eyes watered. I wanted, absurdly, to apologize for making the moment uncomfortable. Instead, I touched my face, looked at Denise and said, Please call it in. Linda stared at me. Rachel. No, I said. Not this time. A police officer came 20 minutes later. I gave a statement. Jaden gave one too. Speaking so fast, Denise had to tell him breathing was not optional. The officer took Linda's information and explained the store's trespass order. Linda kept looking at me like I had betrayed some private agreement between us, but there had never been an agreement. There had only been her silence and my swallowing. When it was done, Linda stood by her sedan, pale and shaking. "They'll hate me," she whispered. I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't feel smaller than her grief. "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe you'll just finally know where you end and he begins." She flinched like that hurt worse than the police report. Inside, Jaden held an ice pack to my cheek with the grave seriousness of a man defusing a bomb. "You're bad at this," I said. "I'm a cashier, not a cheek engineer." I laughed, and it hurt. Then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Rachel? It's Daniel. I'm still here." I read it twice. 3 words. No apology, no promise, no miracle. But for once the truth did not arrive too late. Daniel asked to meet me at Laurelhurst Park 3 months later, and I almost said no because healing still felt too much like walking back into a burning house. He texted first, which mattered. No surprise visit. No waiting outside my job. No dramatic speech in the rain like Portland needed one more damp man with unresolved feelings. Just a short message. "I'd like to apologize in person if you're willing. If not, I understand." I stared at it for a full minute while standing in the cereal aisle, holding a damaged box of oat squares. The corner was crushed, so we had to mark it down, which felt personal. I had also been crushed and discounted before. Very relatable breakfast product. I said yes. Not because I missed him, because some doors don't close until you look at the room one last time and decide not to live there. The park was wet and bright that Saturday morning. Sunlight came through the trees in broken pieces, catching on the grass, on puddles, on the leash of a golden retriever who clearly believed every stranger was a lost relative. I sat on a bench near the pond with my hands around a paper coffee cup, watching ducks glide across the water like they had never ruined anyone's life. Daniel arrived 5 minutes early. That was new too. He looked healthier, though not magically fixed. Recovery had not turned him into a movie version of himself. His face was still thin. His hands still trembled when he sat down beside me, leaving careful space between us. But his eyes were clearer, his jacket was clean, his beard was trimmed. He smelled like soap and winter air instead of motel carpet and panic. "Hi," he said. For a moment we just sat there, 2 people who had once promised forever, and then spent 11 years surviving the wreckage of one terrible year. He looked down at his hands. "I started the 30-day program. I heard. Marisol told you?" "No, you texted me still here every Friday." A small smile moved across his face, then disappeared. I didn't know what else to say. It was enough. He nodded, swallowing hard. A kid nearby yelled at a duck for stealing his cracker. The duck looked completely unbothered, which I respected. Boundaries, confidence, theft with grace. Daniel breathed out slowly. I read the old discharge notes, the ones from that night. My grip tightened around the coffee cup. "I asked the hospital for records," he said, "and I talked through it with my counselor." His voice thinned. "You called 911? You told them what I took, then my mom corrected you 3 times. I closed my eyes briefly. I had forgotten that detail. Or maybe I had buried it because remembering everything would have made living impossible. "She told me you were ashamed of me," he said. "That you left because you couldn't stand being married to an addict." I was scared, I said. I was angry. I was exhausted. But I wasn't ashamed of you. His eyes filled. "I'm sorry I let her story become mine." That sentence moved through me quietly. No fireworks, no swelling music, just a tired knot inside my chest loosening by one careful inch. "I'm sorry too," I said. His head lifted. "I'm sorry I learned to disappear so well that even I started thinking silence was safety." He shook his head. "You don't owe me." "I know," I said. "That's why I can say it." We sat with that. Then he told me Linda had agreed to family counseling as a condition before any regular contact. She was furious, defensive, still insisting she had done her best, which, from Linda, was both confession and excuse wearing the same coat. "She blames you," he said. I assumed. It's one of her hobbies. He almost laughed. Then he looked at me, serious again. "I'm not asking you to come back into my life." Good. That time he did laugh, short and painful. "I want you to live, Daniel," I said. "I really do. But I can't be the person who keeps proving you deserve to." His eyes closed. "I know. And I can't hate your mother for you. I know that too. Excellent. Look at us, emotionally responsible adults. Terrifying. He smiled, and for 1 second I saw the man who had burned pancakes in our kitchen and called it cuisine. Then the moment passed, and I let it pass. When I stood to leave, Daniel did not reach for me. That mattered most. He just said, "Thank you for telling the truth." I looked at him beneath the dripping trees, with the pond behind him and the past finally standing where it belonged, behind both of us. "I didn't do it for revenge," I said. "I did it because people die when everyone keeps lying to be polite." Back at the store that evening, Jaden was arguing with the self-checkout machine because it refused to accept a coupon for frozen pizza. "This machine has a personal vendetta," he announced. "Against pizza?" "Against joy." A customer at lane 3 slapped the scanner and shouted, "I want to see the manager." Jaden looked at me. For a second, the old fear tried to rise. Then it didn't. I adjusted my name tag, walked over, and smiled like a woman who had survived worse than a coupon dispute and a frozen pepperoni with attitude. "I'm the manager," I said, and this time, saying it felt like coming home to myself. 6 months later, I still worked the night shift, still argued with the self-checkout machine, and still kept a dented can of tomatoes on my office shelf as a private little trophy. Jaden called it the sacred marinara relic, because apparently every workplace needs one object that looks useless but carries emotional damage. Daniel stayed in treatment longer than anyone expected, including Daniel. He relapsed once, called Marisol before it got worse, and told me afterward because he said lying had already cost him too much. I was proud of him, but from a distance. That distance was not cruelty. It was the fence around the life I had rebuilt. Linda wrote me one letter. No apology, not really. More a careful arrangement of excuses with 2 honest sentences hiding near the end. I was afraid. I made that fear everyone else's burden. I folded the letter, put it in a drawer, and did not answer. Some doors can stay closed without being locked in anger. On rainy nights, when the store lights reflected on the pavement and customers came in, smelling like wet wool and bad moods, I sometimes thought about the girl I used to be. The one who believed silence could keep peace. She was wrong, but she got me here, and here finally I could speak.